Well, it has been a week of highs and lows for the UK Prime Minister. Boris Johnson pulled off the impossible, renegotiating Britain's leave deal with the EU, but was thwarted back home when MPs delayed approval of the Brexit deal. Joining me now to unfold and dissect all of this is David McCredie from the Australian British Chamber of Commerce. Now, before we start, it was called a day of delay, but I tell you what, so much for calling it a Super Saturday, but it was pretty super in terms of England winning. Did you watch the Rugby World Cup?
I did watch a bit of it last night, yes. As I said yesterday, I've got England in the sweep at work, so on the one hand I'm pleased, but as an Aussie, obviously I'm devastated.
Well, I was watching it, I was the only Aussie watching it with a bunch of English people, so yeah, it wasn't so much fun for me, but yeah, they did have a good win, certainly a record-winning season. Okay, let's talk about the first sitting in 37 years, because it was a bit of a surprise, wasn't it? Are you surprised with this outcome?
I am and I'm not, to be honest,
yeah.
because I think if I've learnt anything having followed Brexit over the last 3 years, anytime you think something is going to happen and you're fairly sure that there's going to be a particular outcome, there's always something that throws a spanner in the works. And I think what's happened is Sir Oliver Letwin's amendment was put forward. It was carried as a motion, 322 to 306. There are a number of people who abstained, and there were some interesting connotations around the way it went forward, in that Oliver Letwin said that he was going to support the meaningful vote on the basis that no deal couldn't be an outcome. It's rather complicated. It's not an easy issue to try and unpick, but in essence, there are a number of people who voted for the amendment that would have voted for the deal. So the chances of the meaningful vote on the deal actually getting up are still very real, despite the fact that it all looks like a bit of a shambles at the moment.
It certainly does, doesn't it? Even experts like you are saying that it's confusing, it's a shambles. So for people just sitting at home trying to dissect it all, it's one confusing thing. How do you think the numbers would change? Because a lot of people are talking about if there was a referendum, there's a lot of people that were too young to vote, perhaps have now passed away. So there's a big number of potential people that possibly could have changed their votes. And we just saw with the protests there as well, which is potentially one of the largest marches in British history if they got to the 1 million that they estimated.
Yeah, look, obviously there's a lot of feeling and there's a lot of anger and fire in the public in the UK, pardon me, on both sides of the equation, be that to remain or to leave. And I'm not quite sure that a second referendum would actually resolve this. In football terms, it's 1-1. What do you do then? Do you go to extra time, a third referendum? I think a second referendum is rather problematic. And the question that you'd put on that referendum is problematic as well. And there's been some talk of that overnight again around, well, what would you do? Do you put Boris's deal, remain as another option, and then no deal as a third option? And then how would you countenance? Well, if you need to get a majority of 50% for any one of three options, that sounds rather unlikely. Do you have a preferential system? I think it sounds very complicated to then have the sort of confidence to go forward. Because we're basically going to wind up in the same situation where there are going to be MPs who don't agree with the vote that's been given to them by the public and are not going to back it in the way that you would expect them to.
A sense of deja vu is what Theresa May said in Parliament. We haven't seen her since Boris Johnson took the role. Is that right? In terms of coming out and saying... So what did you think? I mean, she was basically saying a vote... you need to vote for the country. It was a pretty powerful speech. It was, and
it's great to see her putting her head up above the parapet again. She's certainly kept a very low profile in the last couple of months. But, yeah, to her great credit, she backs the Prime Minister and believes that a deal, which is quite frankly not that dissimilar to the deal she had negotiated, should get the support of the government, and that the people's vote, the original people's vote, the referendum, should be respected. This is an opportunity to do that with a deal which protects the UK from some of the downsides of a no-deal exit. and this is the best way to progress the situation. I think she was very eloquent in the way she put that forward.
Yeah, certainly very passionate, wasn't she? I'm hearing a lot of people in the UK being interviewed by Sky News, and a lot of people hearing comments from health professionals, for example. They're concerned about the NHS and how detrimental it will be if Brexit would be to the health system. Obviously, small business. I mean, this is just affecting so many people. We heard the leaders when they announced the change in Brussels, and they were talking about, yes, about the free trade deal and the movement and the border being softer, but also the main thing was people and peace. So really getting back into that humanitarian side.
Yeah, look, I think the interesting thing is that if you back the deal, the transition period between now and the end of next year, nothing really changes. So people are still able to move freely. The current situation continues on. In fact, some of the people who voted for the Oliver Letwin amendment last night were actually worried about the extension of the transition period. And basically, most of the upset is about the idea that there may be no deal at the end of the transition period. So we need to actually get to the withdrawal agreement part done to allow that future free trade agreement to be negotiated, and the future arrangements across a wide range of aspects, including healthcare, including rights of people to travel, including the border in Ireland. And all of those things may be dealt with in a future arrangement during the next 12 or 15 months that we have until the end of next year. And as I said yesterday, there is an option. If by the middle of next year it doesn't look like they'll be in a position to implement that by the end of next year, there is an option to extend to sort out those details.
I wonder how that new Brexit-free channel on Sky News is going. They've got to 5 hours Monday to Friday of Brexit-free news.
I haven't seen it. I'm not sure that it's on Foxtel yet, but I think I might tune in.
Well, I think it says UK only, but maybe they'll bring it here. And finally, what is your prediction between now and the 31st of October? What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, that's the million-dollar question.
That's the million-dollar question I'm asking you now.
Maybe the million-person question, given the number on the streets. Look, what will happen on Monday is that most likely the meaningful vote will be returned to the Parliament. There's some conjecture about how that will happen, given that you can't put the same bill up twice. Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's the Leader of the House, will have to sort that out with the Speaker. But they will start progressing the Withdrawal Agreement Act. So that then means that the Parliament is actually negotiating the nitty-gritty and voting on that. The challenge with that is any and all amendments that might happen to that going forward will then need to be re-agreed with the EU. So it will be a very complicated week. Not only that's not the only business in front of the House, but the Queen's speech, which happened last Monday, which outlines the government's agenda for the next 12 months, is also due to be raised in the House and debated. So it'll be a very busy week in politics in the UK yet again this week.
Yes, and Boris Johnson legally required to send that letter to request the extension as well. So
that's right. So that's due pretty much as we speak.
Right.
So Donald Tusk, Boris Johnson's already spoken to Donald Tusk. He said that he will send the letter. So the letter will be sent. However, Boris was compelled to do so by law, but he's not compelled to necessarily push the EU leaders to actually support that request. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next 24 hours.
It certainly will. Well, thank you for coming in again today. I wanted you back because we needed to unfold all of this from yesterday. So 2 days in a row, hopefully we'll see you again here on Weekend Edition. David McCredie, thank you.
My pleasure.